Z, you're up. How's it going?
Good. It's been an interesting bit of time with the companies I've been seeing over the past couple of days.
And remind the
So
audience
it's a
again,
range of.
what do you uh
So I
what
source
does it
deals,
mean?
run through them.
Yeah.
So in general, yeah, basically I find deals from a bunch of people in my network, do a little discovery on the company, research what they're really about, how legit it could be, then either get introduced to them or reach out directly to them to learn more. And there's a lot of cool things that I get to see. Well, I was at like a network thing actually with a couple of VCs, and a lot of aerospace came up, and there's algorithm AI that's building simulations for testing missiles, things like that, drones, areas like that. And also when it comes to deep tech, which is the other aspect of what we think about, agriculture tends to come up because there's a lot that can be done there. For example, there's hydroponics, an alternative way of growing things. So when it comes to like mass production, a lot is just really produced in fields. It's just the way things are. Farmers, use tractors and kind of just farm. It's simplified. That's very much a simplification because there's a lot of tech involved in that stuff. But to keep it like really simple, but there's a different method of growing. There's hydroponics, aquaponics, and aeroponics. And these methods essentially don't use earth; they use water and or air, and some other method of introducing nitrogen and oxygen to the plants. I've been seeing a lot of companies trying to build something for the consumer, and very little like direct innovation, because in reality in that field, if all you're offering is a plug and play solution, I think anybody who's looking to grow in their house with such a system is going to build it on their own. And it's pretty simple. Get a couple PVC pipes. You can get like, I don't know, Arduino or something, and automate the watering process, the filtering, the bubbling. It's not difficult. So a plug and play option is not as innovative. And I don't know what innovation I could even think of to kind of introduce there, but I haven't seen enough of it, which is interesting to see. And then in the drone industry, it's just exploding. But again, there's like some innovation, and then there's some just okay, we deliver packages, and then it's like okay, so what do you deliver really? And it's like always organs, blood. It's all medical, which is great, but very little brand new approaches. But there have been a couple. They tend to think about mesh networks, which is fun. It's a very new way of thinking about how drones should be communicating. So there's that in the industry. And also what I've been saying, which is important, is that the aerospace industry actually has things going on and has money coming in, as opposed to right now looking at the market. A lot of other things don't have that as well. Consumer things like that. Just given what the market currently looks like from the consumer end, it's just not as. It's pretty risk averse. Yeah, we're in an interesting space. I've been seeing a lot of cool companies and a lot of cool approaches.
I think that really gets into something like really important. Z is like on deal flow. He like goes through a bunch of the companies that come through and pre-vets them before Andrew and I might have a more detailed conversations as GPs, right? As general partners, we might be looking to invest. We might be looking to collaborate in some meaningful way. And then where all of this comes together, because Z's like a superstar technical expert. Like he dives in and he just understands things. Unlike Andrew. Um, is it too much shade in the morning? Oh, by the way, so Andrew's on.
No, it's
We haven't
it's all good.
really introduced. Andrew's on the East Coast. I'm on West Coast. Z's in Israel right now. So +10 for me, +7 for Andrew.
Yep.
So thanks Z for joining. So
Mm-hmm.
it's basically his evening, my morning, Andrew's afternoon,
Almost
early
afternoon.
afternoon.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're getting to it. We talked to an aeroponics company, right? Not too long ago. I forget the name. We shouldn't
Yeah,
really drop names of companies, but basically, I think they're based out of Toronto. They're doing some great stuff, and I think what we should be like, really talking about for the general audience is like how we're getting into companies and what we're looking for. And we should disclaim that what we're looking for doesn't necessarily reflect what other venture groups are looking for, right? We're not saying like no, these are terrible companies, right? It's just not right for what we're doing. So, for instance, an aeroponics company that focuses on like a plug and play solution is interesting. we can tell you that there's like a market, like manufacturing needs, like, oh, you might need PC, plastic injection molding, you need branding, marketing, good supply chain, warranty, whatever, right? That isn't in our wheelhouse. We're not looking necessarily at consumer products. If they have a play, which is like growing food in space, remote island um, food diversification efforts and resiliency in in places that have food scarcity. Great, like that's
Local
something.
growing,
Yeah, that's
like
something we'd be very
in an
interested in.
actual store.
But when we look at the landscape of like these hydroponic home grow kits that you see popping up on um, Kickstarter,
Kickstarter.
basically like candy, I'm not interested. Like I'm just flat out not interested because it's a super low barrier to entry, a PVC pipe and some spray hose and a crappy pump, and I'm off to the races, right? Throw in some off the shelf fertilizer. The person that creates a better fertilizer will have a more defensible moat than the company that produces the aeroponics or whatever home grow kit, right? The person that takes a home grow kit and puts it on the space station, that's defensible, right? That's a market. I'm not saying that your product won't succeed in a commercial space. I'm saying that we're not in it for that.
Yeah, and also just to clarify, I think we're open to consumer
We
products,
are
but
on the
not
product
at
side.
the level that exactly.
Yeah. So
Not at the
we
level that
have
Chris was
another
just
we have
alluding to.
another arm. So here's Actuate Ventures. Here's Building in Public. This is what we do. This is what we talk about internally. Okay, a company comes to us just yesterday talking about a new technology that they have in house. They're purchasing it. Um, they're purchasing their actual raw product from China. It's fairly interesting. They have no defensible moat, but they have potential for integration to existing products as a drop in. They need funding. It's just like two guys in a garage, right? What I told them flat out, we can't, this is not their projections and what they have right now. Um, Not something that we can invest in, but we could certainly help them go through our product studio, which is Exai Technologies. We can do pitch decoration. We can do marketing. We can help apply for SIBRs because I told them, it's like, hey, go, you have a possible angle that could be appealing to the government and you get your initial funding. We might take a success cut for helping you get through that program.
And also, just for the audience, for people that are new to or emerging in the government relations space, do you mind going over what SIBRs and SITRs are? That's SBIR and STTR.
I certainly can, but I can never remember the acronym. Andrew, help me out.
It's like small business something
Innovation,
or other, but
research, grant, or something.
innovation.
So these two things are grants. There's a phase one, there's a phase two. Phase one, fairly easy. Yep. You show promise, you apply, you have to hit certain targets in terms of what the government is looking for. For instance, another company, Individual, that was in talks with us, has a very interesting new chip design. Their initial SIBR was denied. They went out to Space Symposium. They talked about it with folks and they got a brand new idea. Why not reapply? But their angle now is radiation hardening, resistance. Their technology should be more radiation resistant inherently. So, but that was not on their radar. That was not on their concept of what they were thinking about a product. And now that door opens because they're talking to more industries and they're like, oh, is there another avenue, right? The money that comes in, regardless, they just need for their bench test, right? So when we have companies go through these SIBR and SITR processes, they will help these companies understand how to apply and what dots they might not be connecting. Right? Yep. It's again not to say that the company can't, these individuals and their products and their technologies can't succeed. They might not be right at the stage and the potential that we see within our thesis, deep tech and aerospace. And that's why we still have the product studio arm to do more traditional work, right? We're not leaving on the table. We want to help incubate these companies kind of at a sidearm. And maybe one day they'll join back in, they'll grow in a direction that is more substantive to our needs. Or we prepare them for the world that they want to get into.
Yeah.
Right.
And to kind of share a couple of the dynamics in which we engage, I think that's a good transition into that. Aside from just offering services, if there is a potential thread where the technology, the process, the team has an added benefit to the ecosystem in which we're building, if we see a potential viability to scale, we do deal in commercialization of technology as well, right? Which is very different from just cookie cutter consumer products that you might find on Kickstarter, which I love Kickstarter. Awesome innovations from time to time. Not knocking them at all. And crowdsourcing crowdfunding is a great platform.
Of a percent is like
Yes.
interesting, and then the
100%.
rest is hot resale garbage.
Yeah, exactly. But don't want to just completely close that door, right? But
Yeah.
the way that we're engaging is we also do have the venture studio side of things. So we may take if there is a smaller team and they do have a novel technology or something with potential, we may take those companies under our wing for a higher percentage cut, and we will co-build those businesses with them. We'll probably start, especially in the higher risk opportunities, with an engagement where we'll validate some assumptions with them. So we have a 2-gate validation process. One, is it a problem that needs to be solved, and should it be solved in the way that they're attempting to, or the company's attempting to? And secondly, is it commercially viable to scale? And once we validate that and mitigate the technical risk, then we could dive into the deep end with them and actually run them through the venture studio side of what we're doing, where we would make a traditional investment and then actually co-build that company for a higher percentage ownership, because we essentially be building it with them, and we could put the team in place to support that. So that is another dynamic outside of just the services that we offer. So really what we want to do is be helpful and contribute to scaling out an ecosystem that does facilitate a fluid flow of innovation between and amongst the commercial, the private, the institutional, the government sectors, because it's something that's missing in the space. So while there may be some hard no's, which there absolutely should be, there is still support in where we do see potential. We still ask the question, how can we help? Also, on the note of the CIBR and the sitter initiatives, we'll drop links, but there's going to a website and trying to navigate the various, and not just with these programs, but with any grant initiatives. There are murky waters and there's nuance to moving through that, and relationships in place that help facilitate those two things, that help facilitate much more smooth transition through those processes.
Yeah, see, sorry for cutting you off. It was just too exciting to not talk about the things that come through the door.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's like the point.
Have we talked to any additional drone than our first one?
I've talked to a few. I've put them all in the database that we have. Yeah, I mean, the one that really caught my eye. So there's one. The first one that caught my eye was an approach they were taking to building, which was essentially to lean on regulation, look at exactly what local regulation required and build for that. And they required like a lot of customers based on that, as opposed to trying to build something new and hope that the regulation passed through. And they were like super fluent in this. They had the pipeline for manufacturing kind of ready to roll, not just ready to roll, it was like in production with flights, which was a great idea. Very numbers based sort of company, I guess, and approach. Very smart, interesting. And the other one was thinking to be able to enter the delivery market by going into the surveillance market. The basis of how he was thinking was by not relying on internet communication between drones necessarily. It's there, but redundancy with base stations and mesh networks, and then eventually kind of relying on actual constellations, which was very, very cool. It also made sense considering off the grid that allowed things to be, which is vital when you're thinking about certain regions, like think about the U.S.-Mexico border. You wouldn't have any downtime because a base station covered like an immense amount of area. It was very smart. Yeah, I think I showed him to you guys. He's been a little out of touch. I was going to connect him with some business, but he just wasn't responding, which is interesting. Okay, I was able to probably get him a pretty nice contract. No response, which is odd. I think it's funny because what we were talking about just before, about who we focus on and why. A lot of that really is because of our principal and thesis, which is important to stick to, because when you have a fund and it's about the thesis, going outside of that is just really a problem when you're trying to answer back to your LPs about what you're actually doing. It's like, wait a second, that's super scattered. Aren't you guys focused on something very particular? That's why I got involved. So when it comes to who we look at and who we take next steps with, a lot of it is because of that, because there is that requirement to stick to what we're based on, regardless of what else we think about personally.
And to speak to that a bit, so our overarching thesis of what we do is for the advancement of humanity. So there's got to be some sort of thread there where there's an impact.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. And thank you for chiming in on that. It's interesting that you brought up drone technology specifically. We must have spoken to a couple people recently, but whenever we mention there is a company that we're invested in that does autonomous drone inspections, and when we talk about that, really the technology behind it is the driving and novel factor, right? That's the computer vision, the AI machine learning, and their special sauce formula at facilitating an optimized workflow and supporting that optimization in the maintenance and repair process overall. But what's interesting is whenever we mention a quote unquote drone company in general, it's a hit or miss. Either there's familiarity and recognition of the potential value, or there's a very hard eye roll because there are a lot of drone companies that are out there as well. And I think that we see this whenever there's a new technology or topic, just the flood of attention toward it. As we've seen with AI recently, anybody that's doing any kind of smart technology definitely highlights the AI aspect of it for marketing and positioning, which does make sense. And it creates this additional layer of, I don't know if noise is the right word, or distortion, that you have to kind of look beyond to really understand what the novel approach or application of that new technology is. Like, what is the value? Is there something special here? Or is it another cookie cutter?
I think it also has to, it's a type of bias that Andrew and I have spoken to in like our own ramblings and conversations, when one of the things that we want to get away from is like this really like narrow-minded and focused, right? Drone deliveries in the US are cost prohibitive for the part. That's just economics. And so a lot of the folks that we've talked to is like, oh, you're doing drones, it's a dead end. Well, it's not a dead end in many parts of right? Drones are these multi-copter drones are relatively cheap, and like, oh, I need to send medication across a river that has like no road infrastructure. Great, done. Suddenly, there's strong economic to do a thing that wasn't done before, right? Everyone's chased like a super dangerous multi-copter taxi service. I'm not getting in that.
Those
Helicopters are already
boxes that look like coffins with propellers. No thanks.
Yeah. Although like Brazil has a good helicopter tax, which is really it's not a thing at all in the U.S., right, or anywhere. We also talked about how we should open our minds to innovate for tech, in that some innovations are not actually innovations; they are just not familiar with, and the market hasn't opened up here, especially in the U.S. We have a tendency to go like the U.S. in everything, and therefore, if an innovation doesn't happen here, it's new, or when it arrives on our shores, it must be new. I heard an older gentleman talk about. I'm not going to actually whip out a credit card. That sounds actually pretty dumb. But it's like
holding an imaginary credit card here.
Yeah, holding an imaginary credit card, and it's like, oh, the chip technologies. They should really, I'm kind of wary about the chip technologies. I hear them having issues from time to time. I hope they work. I'll use, they should work through the kinks before rolling this out. It's been rolled out for like a decade more before it hit US. It's fine. It's better in like every conceivable than your mag stripe here. But because it seems new to us, they're like, oh no, we're looking at innovations, right? And we're not lack of integration and progress simply because it's. I think the
And
term
that's
is
something,
weird trees. But
yeah, and that's something that speaks to potential. If it has been successful in a previous market, the question then is to ask. There might be an assumption that if it was successful there, it would be successful here.
Yeah,
That also might not necessarily be true,
yeah,
because you have to ask where and why might it or might it not.
yeah. And the acronym that I'm talking about, weird, is Western educated, industrialized, rich, and yeah, we're very quick to discount anyone outside of that Anglosphere countries.
Yeah, not surprisingly, that was a new terminology for me to learn about.
What next do we have going? We have some
Good question.
and Andrew has some travel.
I do. Going to New York here in a couple weeks. Gonna go meet some family offices and fund of funds that we've started conversations with. And it seems like there's a bunch of stuff going on in New York those specific 2 or 3 days that I was going to be there. There's actually an event that Chris sent me yesterday with a venture capital group in space. That's having an event on that 16th as well. So yeah, a little 2 weeks away. I'll be heading up to New York. Going to meet Josh, one of our other GPs, in person for the first time. So that'll be fun. But yeah, we're going to go spread the good word of Actuate Ventures and what we're up to, and see if we can't lock in some capital to our fund that we are fundraising for currently. By the way, something that we'll work on is getting a little bit more structure to the introductions and everything like that. But everything that we discuss is just concept and our opinion and observations of the world. None should be taken as financial or investment advice. I heard that on a podcast recently, and I realized, oh yeah, we should probably give that disclosure that's legally required. So when we're talking about different industries and everything, they're just observations and analysis. Please do your own research and diligence in all the interesting things that are going on in the world. But yeah, got some upcoming travel in New York, and also Tech Week is coming up in the within like a month or so. Carolina might be making her way up there, but we'll at least have Nicole out and about and representing Excite Technologies, our product strategy, design, and execution studio, and keeping an ear to the ground for any inkling that might be interested for Actuate Ventures to be aware of. And the conversations are progressing regarding the incubator that we were talking about on our last call. And those are proving very fruitful and insightful. And I think that's about it. A lot of LP outreach. We've got a nice list going. So we've curated a pretty quality list of potential investors, family offices, fund of funds, handful of angels, little over 50% of them in the US, but it's a global list. So that's something that we're doing a run through, and those are all the new things I could think of. How about yourself, Chris?
I think we keep going on and like
Yeah.
yeah, we continue to we just share not just like the progress, but making sure that we're transparent with like as we're growing and learning through this venture space. And like really didn't have a pocket today. Like yeah, the what, so like maybe we talk about the input. Or Andrew, if you had.
I did actually have something come to mind. Two things that happened this week. It's really funny. I was actually thinking right before this call, a couple of weeks ago, we had a structure that we're going to give a shot, like the retro structure, what worked well, what didn't. That lasted a call. So as you all are out there and working on your own initiatives, it's okay to pivot and evolve. Just stay consistent and things will work out. But earlier this week, we actually got together with our strategic partner in the space in everything that we're doing, Space Foundation. And we were going through some upcoming initiatives. So there is a country that is putting out a bid for like an accelerator program that we're going to like co-bid on together. So we were exploring what that might look like. So it was really nice to kind of get in the weeds and flesh out what a strategic relationship looks like in something very specific, like applying for a bid on supporting an accelerator program. It's been really nice getting creative with the different people that are in this space and collaborating on a lot of these initiatives and having those fruitful conversations. That's the one thing that came up. And then when it comes to the incubator itself, what we're finding is that there's a very large presence and warm. It's really warm to observe the alignment that the state of Colorado has with the incubator that's there. And that goes to show that if you're doing something right and you're creating a hub that specifically focuses on enabling these emerging startups and technologies and true innovation to have that fluid relationship between the different sectors, it works really well. And it's nice to see an entire community come around that. So our next step in the conversations is to reach out to them, find out how we might be able to contribute to that. Because again, we're not looking to create another silo in the space or a silo in the innovation space in general. We do imagine this as a collaborative effort. So reaching out and having those conversations is really the next step there, because it seems very ingrained in the infrastructure out there. And we have a corporate partner that we've been advancing the conversation in. There's a lot of alignment with their mission and our mission overarching what we're doing. So looking at strategic partnerships with corporates and what that dynamic might look like, what the support might look like, what resources might be available, what kind of environment can we create together to contribute to that overarching mission. So that's been really nice to explore as well. And then having a very tangible physical application of that, right? So it's really nice to speculate on, hey, what if we work together to build this thing? Yeah, that'd be great. And then it just stops there. You don't actually do anything. That doesn't make any sense either, right? So you definitely want to be sure to transition those conversations and apply them to a specific initiative. The initiatives that we're exploring are something between this more long-term infrastructure of an incubator, wherever we might plant one down, and the more short-term, quick turnaround, deep work over a short period of time accelerator model that we've been speaking about from the beginning as well. And what resources do we have in place to facilitate the intended outcome? And then how do we measure success in each one of those instances? So a lot of thought work around that. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, just a lot of that going on, just making sure all those pieces are in play. And it's okay, as you have to plan. The hardest part about hardest part of this kind of startup is that needs that take much longer to sprout, not even mature. Like people are like, get to revenue. It's real. Like the portfolio companies that we look at is very clear cut. It's like, okay, they do their pitch, they do their whatever, and they sell
or services.
They sell something, right?
Yeah.
And it's more tangible, it's more immediate. It's like, here's we're laying the ground, and then as it progresses, then. But that also means that we need to make sure that we're strategically aligned, and then and the initiatives as they no longer like which ones do we want to fruition versus others, right? That is a benefit of our these models, in which you don't in a physical has to weigh actually building out their, and that means if they do it,
yep,
right. Whereas we're maturing conversations and we can move them and shift them, right? It doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the considerations in the flexibility of having something to sell and getting to commercial viability, there is an ideal outcome to work toward. One of the questions that we ask and help portfolio companies or the projects that we engage on is what alternative applications might we consider to get you there sooner if it's going to take a while to get there. So we've actually recently spoken to a vehicle company and had great success at fundraising. They got into a really good point with a pretty lean team, under 10, very impressive. And they went the route of realizing they were working with this company that had technology that they were using on their vehicles. And they ended up strategically partnering and working toward an acquisition of that company and that technology. And they actually took that technology and created an entire revenue stream and offering and product offering to support their initiative even further. So into creative ways of saying like, hey, I know where I'm going. How do I support getting there in a way that it's not a distraction, but it's mutually beneficial, like it's symbiotic on that way there. And being okay with pivoting and supporting that, that's kind of just part of the process, right? But I think what Chris was alluding to is those are really, really easy, not easy, but you come up with things like that in a, how can I go sell something or a service or a thing, whatever it is, versus what we're doing, which is building infrastructure. It's like, what are the pieces and parts of the environment that make sense to put in place to support all the things that we want to do? there's no real tangible, this is our path to this very specific thing that we want to build or service that we want to offer. It's amorphous. But on the other side of that, it gives us a lot of room and flexibility to play. And that's nice.
We actually need one of our friends who in the industry that's doing almost something similar to our accelerator.
Yeah.
Right? Was it right? If it is, we'll get that data point and then we might emulate that. It fits our needs.
Yes, definitely find others to learn from as well. You'd be surprised if you ask for advice and perspective how many people that have been through it are willing to share their lessons learned. Because it hurts sometimes to go through those lessons. And sometimes it's a lot of fun and you get to the other end and think, if I would have just done this from the beginning, it would have been so much easier and I could have gotten this done so much faster. So a lot of people are willing to share that insight. So as you're going out and you're building or you're investing or solving some sort of problem, definitely pair up with people that have done it before or that are doing it right now. And mutually, the conversation is usually mutually beneficial because you can always learn from those who have done it before or are doing it currently. Very cool.
Yeah. Z, is there anything else that we want to about, or you want to roll us out here?
I got one small tip. Did you have something to bring up, by the way? Because mine's totally random.
Mine's random as well.
Go ahead.
It flashes back to what I mentioned before about sticking to our thesis and what we stand for. I was on a call with a bunch of investors, and one of them is kind of being interviewed, and then afterwards we're breaking into conversation, and they asked this investor about. So I'm going to say this investor said it becomes much harder to identify who I'm talking about. This investor said, they focus that it's important to focus on female founders and ensure that there's more capital being allocated to female founders, which is a whole different discussion as to why the numbers look like what they look like there. That's not for here. And so this investor is then asked, so what does your portfolio look like? How many are solely female teams? And the investor's response was basically, so. And it's very important to stand by your thesis. You can't just claim it. And it was just very funny to me in that call. I was hoping to hear yes, of course, here's actually how it's working. But the reality of the response was nothing. And I was kind of like, okay, come on, give me something real. But that's what's on my mind today.
That's interesting. And, there could have been a really slick save there too. Like we noticed this opportunity to move in that direction and stand by that. So here's our plan to do that. There wasn't even a plan in place. It's interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know how you couldn't see a question like that coming. My random one, just to end on the note of random, I'm looking at my desk and I have probably 12 different piles of business cards as we went out to Utah Tech Week and then SpaceCom and then Space Symposium, and I've organized them and I was like, okay, I'm going to input them and reach out to all of these people. And I realized that was a blocker that I was giving myself to actually reaching out to the people. So it just started reaching out, which is great. And I was talking to a friend of ours in the space, and she's like, yeah, I sat down, I rewarded myself with all the things that I love, and I just knocked it out. And her driving factor was she had somebody waiting for that to take action on those. When in our scenario, I'm the one taking action on those. So we have a tendency to create our own blockers and our own reasons to do something a particular way, but it doesn't necessarily need to be done that way. So I guess when something comes up that you need to take action on, bypass the excuses or the structure that you put in your own way, and just do it. And if you got a stack of business cards, just send the damn emails or make the phone calls and get rid of them. It's okay to not have a rigid structure with the things that you're doing. Structure's nice, but yeah.
Especially for a small team, right? Like in a big organization, as a pipeline, a funnel, playbooks. Yeah, be rigid, but you're also so fast that it's taking action anyway.
Yep.
But in our case, and on my end, I never had those blockers. So it's like either I reach out or I don't. And if I forget to reach out, it was not possibly, it wasn't really important to begin with. I don't miss out on those shots because they weren't shots to begin with. I have not regretted.
No regrets.
Okay.
So stay true to who you are defined, and stay true to that. Like, embody it, right? Identify the tasks that actually need to be done. Don't just make up work for the sake of making up work. And keep going, right? Don't be afraid to pivot. As long as you have a clearly intended outcome and you're moving toward it, you'll get there. All right, Z, take us out.
Yeah, so that's our that's our building in public from the last podcast till now. That's what we got. We'll be back in a bit with more things because there's a lot going on. A lot. It's intense like that. But thanks for tuning in. Subscribe everywhere, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Even if you're subscribed to one, you should subscribe to the other because it's better there. And if you're subscribed on that one, you should subscribe on the other one because it's obviously better over there. And yeah, thanks a bunch and see you guys soon.
Cheers all.